Hey everybody, it's Prajesh here.
And Tane here.
Welcome to our podcast, Baskets of Knowledge, Chats with a Difference. In our podcast, we invite guests from around the country and around the world to talk about how they got to where they're at the moment. It's about a journey, it's about an experience, it's about their life. Kia ora koutou everybody, welcome to another episode of Baskets of Knowledge. Again, today it's just me. Tane is away doing some pretty cool sporting things, so he's not going to join us. So you get to hear me. And I think my biggest learning over the last week was, and I wrote about that today in my LinkedIn article, was about, I heard this phraseology about all behavior is communication. And it got me thinking, and that makes so much sense because, we all have behaviors and we all think of communication as us talking. But actually, we all have behaviors that actually elicit some sort of communication. When you're tired, or when you're sad, when you're angry. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. It gets some sort of emotion, and it goes back to young people. When I thought about where the quote came from, it came from a doctor who writes about how young people communicate with us through behavior. So that doesn't change when you become an adult as well, because when you think about your colleagues and your workplaces and your friends, they're communicating some things through their behavior. And I was like, oh, this is really great learning. It's beginning to make me be more aware of my actual behavior. What am I trying to communicate? Also, when I'm working with other people, what are they trying to communicate by not communicating? So yeah, that's my learning for the week. And yeah, but as always, that's a bit of a banter at the start when we get the podcast going, but it's not about me. It's not about Tane. It's about our guests. And those of you that listen to us often, we scour the country and the world to get people that we think we're amazing. And for those of you that are first-time listeners, welcome to our podcast. Hopefully you will join us and enjoy the ride. And today, I'm really honored and really privileged and really excited to invite our guest on. I've been following this guest for a while on LinkedIn, so I'm a bit of a stalker. And yeah, the content they produce is pretty amazing, but also all the mahi and the work they do is really, really pretty inspiring as well. And I guess that's just a snapshot of what you see in their lives. So as always with our podcast, we want to talk about what happens behind that inspiration. Thank you and welcome to our podcast, Zeena.
Thank you, Prajesh. I appreciate the invite and just reaching out. Yeah, thanks. It's just awesome to be here.
No, beautiful. Zeena, I guess for our listeners who know nothing about you, do you want to tell them who you are at this point in time in your life? And then we'll talk about how we got to that stage, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you put titles, I'm not really big on titles, but I guess in terms of helping others put a GPS on things, I'm Zeena Khan, and I describe myself as a leader, speaker, and author. Myself, I currently live in Wellington CBD. I've been here for the last 5 years. Moved down here from South Auckland, Mangere, in 2019. And so, yes, I've been here for about 5 years. And for me, there's a lot of things I'm not quite sure which way to go, where to go. So, yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Awesome. We'll navigate that. This is Zeena tonight as we have this conversation. And, I love what you said, titles, lots of people live their world based on a title, but we're actually not a title. So I love the way you start the conversation because, like, oh, what do you do? I'm an XYZ. No, what do you actually do? Oh, you get stumped, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember I went to a function once and you might like the Zeena, and somebody asked me, normally like, what do you do for your job and blah, blah, blah. But this person said to me, what do you do in your free time? That was his first question. And I was like, well, that really stumped me. And I was like, that's a great question. And his premise for that was he basically said, everybody here will tell you what to do for the jobs, but I don't really care about your jobs. I want to know what you do in your free time. And if I resonate with you, we'll keep talking. Otherwise, I'll say, see you later. I was like, wow, what a great way to look at things, which is pretty cool, I thought. Yeah.
And were you stumped at it? Like when he asked you the question, like, what do you do in your free time? Were you stumped?
I was stumped because I have to think about it. Normally you just automatically go, oh, I do blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I actually stop and actually think what I do in my free time because we're so conditioned to go, I'm at XYZ and I do this for work. And it's just automatic. And I was like, oh, so yeah. So, yeah, what do you do in your free time, Zeena? What do you do in your free time?
I knew you were going to do that. It's quite an interesting question because I also get stumped by that when people ask me. Because I've got a really high work ethic. I'm very driven and ambitious, I guess, to a point. And for me, I really have to sometimes think about it because I forget about the free time and doing other things other than work, but I just actually really enjoy it, work itself. But if I was to say free time, what I do like to do is, especially in Wellington, right in my backyard, we've got Te Papa Museum, we've got a number of art galleries, we've got so many theatres and movie complex and stuff. which is all what other cities have as well. But to have the National Museum here, it's like it's just in my backyard. So I love art. I can't say that I get it. Like I wouldn't know how to describe it and stuff. But what it does for me is that because I'm always thinking about something. Uh, yeah, my mind's just continuously going. So when I stand in front of art, I feel like my mind just completely goes blank, which is really awesome for me because I'm trying to think about the artists, what they were thinking at the time, and it's just a very much a fascination for me. So for me, looking at art, going to art galleries, etc., and I love the fact that it's in my backyard. It just gives me that sense of reprieve, and that's what I love to do in my free time because it
And
just
I
helps
guess,
me do the whole just go blank basically.
yeah, and I guess that's the whole embodiment of just being present. You're totally present at that
Yeah.
moment in time. Yeah, you might be like, I don't know what this art's all about, but hey, I can be present, which is really, really beautiful. Talking about the presence, you've told us who you are at the moment, but let's flick back to all those years ago when you were a young person. And if
Mm.
someone said to you when you're a young person, hey, Zeena, in XYZ, you're going to be a leadership, you're going to do coaching, you're going to be leading, doing all these cool things, what would you have said to that person at that point in time in your life when you were, I guess when you were, if you can remember when you were in final year of school?
Yeah, 100%. Well, actually, I'll take you back further because it was a conversation I was having with a colleague recently, and we were talking about just childhood, hopes, dreams, aspirations, etc. And it was just timely because we only had that conversation a week ago. And it was interesting because from a cultural aspect, I'm a, a blended mix. So I am Chinese, Fijian, Indian, born in Suva, Fiji, moved to Māngere, South Auckland in the early 80s. And so you can imagine the cultural mix that was there back in the 80s. And a lot of kids at the time, I think I was like, started school at 5, they didn't understand. When kids don't understand who you are, they can't make out who you are. They just poke fun at it. It's just a normal behavior thing. And I remember kids asking me like, what are you? And I always say Zeena because I didn't know. I was like, what do you mean? I'm Zeena. And they're like, no, what are you? And from a cultural perspective, you're either one culture. There was hardly any blended kids back then that I knew of anyway. Felt it was quite unique. And so I got bullied at school, a little bit ridiculed, but I didn't get it because I was like, I honestly was so oblivious to it, I didn't get it. So at home, the help of family, but especially my influence with my grandma. She was the one that would always talk to me because I would talk to her after school. And she helped raise me with the rest of the family. So, we talked about things and as I'd relay stuff to her as a, between 5 to 10 year old kid, she actually said to me, Zeena, whatever people say to you, try not to take it to heart. It does, it's easier said than done. But she said one day you will be someone's leader. You'll probably be you strive for being leader, a position of influence. And she didn't say it in so many words, but it was very similar to that. And so I internalized that and I thought, yeah, actually I will be. And then it kind of just rolled from there, I feel. Another influence was obviously with my dad, sorry. He passed away in 2009, but he was a huge influence. Initially raised me as a single dad. And what was interesting is he would always say to me, Zeena, learn the rules and play the game better. And education is your power. Get educated so you can get a good job, have opportunities, etc., etc. Parents live through their children from a legacy point of view vicariously. And I'm talking like I'm 6 and 8 or between 6 and 10 years old. And these are the conversations that I was having with my grandma, my dad. And I always felt a little bit beyond my years because I had that adult conversation. I was the only child at the time too. So so 3 of us. Yeah. And it was just those momentous moments and quotes that I always think about dad's quotes, like learn the rules and play the game better. And that's the only thing, even though I didn't quite understand it, but I understood it. And I just kept going with that. And here I am today.
Yeah, it's so crazy, when you do positive psychology and learn about human brain and behavior, those formative years, so from 0 to 6, it's whatever happens, and it's
Yeah.
the ages from 6 onwards where things really start happening. So it sounds like these conversations that you had with your dad and your grandma were pretty formative in
Mm.
terms of where you are right now. You may not have thought about it as a 6-year-old, but as you said before, they've just been living there vicariously, and now today you are in those roles there.
Yes.
either because of that or due to that. We have no idea, nurture versus nature, but it's a pretty crazy reflection when you think about it, which is really beautiful. And I guess, as you're growing up, when you got to year 13, your final year of school,
Mm,
what is that like for you as you now? And I always ask this question to people because I think that's the biggest transition you have when you get to that stage there, because when you're in school, everything is set up for you, and then you'll
yes.
have these aspirations and these dreams. Then
Yeah.
you get to your final year of school, whether it's year that whatever education system you're in, and then you're like, okay, now what?
Now what?
Everyone says to you the world is your oyster, but sometimes the world is not your oyster because there's other
Yeah.
things that come in the way. What is that like for you as you navigated that's part of your life?
100%. And fast forwarding to that, I think, high schools or another college that I went to in South Auckland, my experience was that the careers advisors, the teachers, and everyone that's there, and also, your parents, when you go home and show them your report card, they're always asking you, what are you going to do with your life? And you're like, I have no idea, especially when you're like in those 16 to 18 age bracket. But they do try their best to show you different ways, different things. And obviously, as a child, you're always looking around your family as well, in terms of inspiration of what you want to do. But for me, I describe it as Form 7 because I'm that era. I'd like give me the years 9 to whatever, I kind of get lost. But in terms of so Form 7 is what I'm going to talk about. I should have actually left high school at Form 6, to be honest, because Form 7, I did what I had to do, but I went back for the social aspect. And my dad did say to me, like, are you sure you want to go back? Like, what about if you just go do another qualification at the local tech or go to university from Form 6? Because I could have gone. But then I was like, nah, I want to spend another year and do the whole social aspect of things, like the rite of passage, I felt like. But when I think about it, maybe I should have left at the second to last year of school and just gone on my way. But for me, going back on seventh form was really awesome. I did what I had to do in terms of, as you pass your stuff and things like that and have the option of uni or tech or whatnot. But I started to realize that I'm always a person that likes to explore and discover. And once I've got an idea in my head, I do what I want, basically. And when I think of my dad, he was the one that actually did teach me a lot about decision making skills. And I think when I started making my own decisions and then, mirroring that back to him, sometimes it was interesting conversations. So, but for me, what I found is in Form 7, a lot of, because we live in Māngere, so at the time, the airport was the main sort of place to go and work and aspire to be. And I just noticed a lot of my friends would either go to university. I wasn't interested in university, to be honest. I just thought, no, it just wasn't for me. And then the airport was another place you could go and work, and it was, really good jobs over there as well. But then I decided to go to Manukau Institute of Technology, just do something that was completely different from everybody else. So I don't really think I thought it through. I just thought I'll just do what opposite to everyone else is doing because I've just never followed anybody. I take advice from people, I listen, I digest, I talk, I think about it, and then I just make a decision and live and die by my sword. And that's just how I've always been. Uh, yeah, so everyone went to the airport or went to university. I didn't want to go to university, so I thought, well, there's a certificate in management at MIT. Let's not do nothing. So after my last year of high school, I just went to MIT local, easier in terms of cost, closer to home. Didn't have to be on the bus like hours in a day instead of versus going into the city, etc. So it just made sense to me. And yeah, I've completed that year with a certificate in management, but I still didn't know. They didn't connect me in my head to a leadership role. It was just because no one else was doing it. So I did it. Mm.
I like that because a couple of things there that you said that really resonated for me was the fact that you got to the stage there and you're like, oh, everyone's doing that there, so I'm going to do something different. And when I do my current mahi, I always tell people, well, my philosophy is there's no such thing as a bad decision.
Mm.
As you said, you make a decision and then you live and die by that decision, and you don't second guess it and you go, oh, should I, should I? And we know we do that there, but you make a decision, life will happen, and you can always change your mind later on if you want to, but don't think about it. And I guess, I think for you, as you said, at least your dad was there, and from a
Mm,
6-year-old, that was a process that you came through. And I guess the question I have for you now is, I know that you're very strong in the Pacific community. What is that like for you, embracing Fijian, Fijian Chinese, and Indian blend, which
mm,
are three very dynamic cultures and very dynamic in their history? What is it like
mm,
for you as you started navigating your identity because school, as you said before, school was Zeena, but as you started getting older, you start becoming more of these identities or these the word identity is not really comfortable. I guess who you are really, that's all part of
mm.
you. How did you navigate that as a young adult, I guess, as you found your way out of in Mangere,
Yeah.
I guess.
I didn't pay too much mind to it, to be honest, because even in the schoolyard, a 6-year-old being asked to what are you? And I'm like, I'm Zeena. I didn't really think culture was a big thing. I just knew I was blessed with different genetics. And I thought I looked normal to everybody. But obviously I didn't based on the feedback I got from schoolyard kids. But as I got older, I didn't quite, in high school and I didn't quite appreciate the culture as my superpower. I just thought, well, this is what I've been gifted with and roll with it. So, but to realize now in this day and age, I mean, like right now in the present moment, is that I've actually navigated the in between uh, my own way because there's the culture of Chinese or heritage of Chinese, Fijian, Indian. Then it's the immersing into Western culture. You always feel like you're not, and I've only just started realizing this in this age now, is that sometimes you feel like you're not enough of this, you're not enough of that, you're not enough of, I don't know what people want you to be enough of. And I guess for me, because the way I make decisions, the way I navigate life or think about life and my own how I want to live it, I don't care. Like I'm
Yeah,
just like I am who I am, but I don't care what other people sort of think about it. I think it's when I think about when I was younger, being Indian, kids teased, a lot of racism, and it still a lot of is at the moment. But kids would, call you certain terms back in the day, and it wasn't cool from what I could see. And 20 years later, you've got like in the local food courts, the Indian cuisine, everyone's celebrating Eid, Diwali,
yeah,
wearing, non-Indians are wearing Indian outfits or whatnot. And you're thinking, huh? Where was I 20 years ago? Because it wasn't cool. But now it's like everyone's into Bollywood. So I kind of missed a whole decade, and I guess in that way, or a couple of decades. Um, I think for me, because when we came from Fiji, Dad was like very much like learn the Western world, like immerse yourself. And I can only imagine what he may have been going through as he was immersing into the Western culture and adapting to a whole new country to give me opportunity and our family opportunity. And so I just did what he said and made it work. And so I didn't even think about my cultures at all. I was just thinking about adapting and immersing into the Western culture. And to the point where people sometimes used to call our home and I used to answer the phone and they used to hang up because they thought it was a Kiwi woman answering the phone. And then until not that my dad had an accent or anything like that, but when he had a distinctive voice, but not an accent, but when he jumped on, they knew it was my dad Aziz. It was just so funny. And they're like, who was that? They're like, oh, that's Zeena. They're like, oh, I thought that was a, European lady answering the phone. It's like, no. But I
yeah,
don't know if I thought about it. I just sort of rolled with it. And my only direction or goal was to do well at school, get an education. I was so focused on getting a good job, and then going up the leadership ranks with that, and then getting qualified equally so in whatever field I was in. So it was just that was the goal, and it wasn't even about culture until in this recent day job that I have. It is very much focused in the Pacific, or some people call it Pacifica community, and a little bit of pressure, I think, because I wasn't raised in any particular culture
yeah,
intensely.
yeah.
Yeah. So, mm,
What's so synergetic there with your conversation? I was also
mm,
brought up in an Indian household,
mm,
but the Western world was the way you had to. So when I moved to New Zealand, I was like,
Mm,
I just hid away all my Indianness,
yes.
so all my formal Indian outfits, I was like, cannot be seen wearing this here, cannot. How dare I say this here? And it was really, when I reflect back, I was like, I was actually embarrassed of my culture at that
Mm,
time because of
mm,
because of just by doing that, I'd get all, I just said, all these words being said to you and these phrases.
yeah.
And now as you're a bit older, you go, wait a minute, everyone else is embracing it, but whoa, why was I so embarrassed of it when I was growing up? This is so crazy. Like I'm like such a mind warp, and now I'm like
Yeah.
caught. Like, do I go back and embrace it? Am I being a fraud? Like, what is going on here? So it's such a crazy navigation. And the reason I say this is because I find it's awesome that in New Zealand we are embracing Te Ao Māori and the world
Yes.
of Māoridom. But to me, I'm like, wait a minute, I'm not. I haven't embraced my Indianness, and I'm now trying to
Yeah.
embrace another culture. Why am I being a fraud? Should I actually stop and look at my own culture before I embrace another culture? So I have these conversations in my head all the time, going, yeah, it's awesome to do this here, but I should also be doing this here, and how do I do this here?
Yeah.
So it's a really crazy navigation story that I'm having in my head all the time, and
Mm,
there's no right or wrong, but it's a conversation that I have all the time, thinking about that, and how do I navigate that? But hey, it'll
yeah.
it'll come.
I think the navigation part is a big thing because I mean although a third of me is Chinese and I don't like to be like a third of this, a third of that because that doesn't even matter.
Yeah,
You are what you are in terms of heritage, but I'm not really raised in that side, but I know that is part of my heritage. From an Indian side, I have been brought up in the Indian household, but when I was we are all living in Māngere, very much a Polynesian, like a lot of
yeah,
Polynesians and Pacific Islander families were there. So, and even though I was brought up more on my Indian side than my Fijian side, I guess, indigenous to Fiji, um, the Pacific Island context was, I go to school and plenty of Māori Pacific kids there. So I think I learned a lot of what I appreciate now is I learned a lot of my cultural capital through that experience. But in the household, it was from an Indian side. But the thing is that I've always I've navigated, but I know how to move in
yeah,
spaces. And though I think that's the most important thing is that, from a respect perspective, shared values, and respecting your elders and things like that. That's a lot of commonality across cultures. And
yeah,
I think the ability to read the room, and I say this with ease of ability to read the room, because there's so many people that cannot read a room. And you're just like, wow. But for me, it's very much I'm confident moving in any space. And then, as I mentioned that only just recently, I've realized that actually my culture is my superpower is because of the context of the world today,
yeah,
as everyone's talking about culture superpower. And yeah, there's a bit of like, oh, like, did I miss out? Like, could I have been the popular kid because I was ahead of my time?
yeah,
But it's just because everyone else didn't recognize how cool I was back then and
yeah,
literally ahead of my time. But now it's like everyone's all like about the whole culture thing. And I'm like, yeah. And we in the work that I do around workforce is the statistics say in 2040, the population is growing, and so it's going to be Māori, Pacific, Asian. And when I saw that stat for the first time, I was like, I've been here since the 80s. Like,
okay,
hello.
exactly,
Am I the future? I am the future.
exactly,
And I was like, oh my gosh, I was a trendsetter, guys. Guess what? I was
yeah,
a trendsetter. But there's plenty more around same as me, but I guess it's that whole finding our voice and just stepping into it, stepping into our power. But you put me in a non-Pacific or a non-Indian, non-Asian, put me into a mainstream world, I can navigate and I feel
yeah,
fine.
yeah,
I could be the only brown person in the room. I am fine. I will make it
yeah,
work. I just do what I do. And but then when I'm in different cultural spaces, I'm very mindful, and I go back to what I was taught in the household about respect, about watching your P's and Q's, or just feeling the room, and that's the main thing. And so I always follow my energy. So if my energy in a room, uh, I gravitate towards something, I will gravitate. But if my energy says no, I just don't gravitate. I just keep
yeah,
to myself. So yeah,
yeah.
that's how I navigate life
And I
generally.
and that's so well put there, because a lot of people think that, hey, you have to fit into certain categories, but you can just be you. If you
Yeah.
we always talk about, I mean, I was in Mauritius a few months ago, and I
Yeah.
loved it because when I was in Mauritius, it's such a crazy multicultural little island, and every single person said, "Hey, don't we're not Indian or we're not African or we're not French, we're all Mauritian." And I was like, "Wow, what a great way to look at it." They're like, "We don't really
Oh,
care. We don't really care about our heritage. We're all Mauritian." And I was like, "This is really beautiful." And every single person I met said that with a smile on their face and really proud. And I was like, "Wow, what can we learn from those little island nations that are just embracing it and being, hey, it doesn't matter what we look like or where we
yeah.
come from. At the end of the day, we're all representing our one little community and whatever the community is, which is beautiful. But sometimes really hard to do for some people. And as you look at the world today, as you said before, the world is in chaos at the moment. The stuff that's
Mm.
happening in the UK, and it's just like, whoa, this is so mind blowing. Like, what is actually going on? So on one hand, people are embracing
Yeah.
the crazy awesomeness, and on the other hand, people are afraid of the crazy awesomeness, and humanity is just getting a bit ugly. So it's a yeah, it's crazy what
Yeah.
you see in the media. So
I think
yes,
it's interesting you talk about like not fitting in because I've I've always known I don't fit in and
yeah,
I've been okay with it for a very
yeah,
long time. Like yeah, I've actually loved as I've grown up, just being in the awkwardness. Like and I think that maybe speaks to my curiosity, my ability, want to always discovering things, always that, that curious cat. So I've always, and I don't know if it's, being the only child for, a period of time. And I've got siblings and stuff, but, I just think, I don't know if it was that sort of, eldest child responsibility that you have if you've got an old child, if you're the eldest in the family, etc. So I don't know where it comes from, but yeah, for as long as I can remember, I've always loved my own company, but I also equally am quite an extrovert, so I love um, being with people, but quality people.
yeah.
They give me energy, as mentioned. If my energy is saying to me no, I won't go there, and if it's saying yeah, go there, it's like, oh, okay, I'll go there, type thing. So, but I always feel like I'm actually happy and proud. I even appreciate it even more now, in this age and stage of life that I've never had to fit in, and I've always been good with that. So I've got this sometimes this lone wolf, lone ranger sort of mentality,
Yeah.
and I don't know where that comes from, but I'm okay with it. Yeah,
And that's fine, right? As you say, as
yeah,
long as you're comfortable, that's all that really matters.
yeah.
Because, and like you said earlier on, you're always going people are gonna say things.
Mm,
I was running a seminar last week, and it was about labels, and people were talking about, oh, I've been labeled as this, I've been labeled as that, and I was like, yeah, but everyone's gonna label you, no matter what. You cannot control the
yeah,
labels you're given. It depends on the labels you give yourself. That's the only one that matters, right? So
yeah.
if you take on the labels that other people give you, you're just selling yourself short.
Mm,
Whereas, what you've done is, I don't really care about the labels. I'm my lone wolf, my lone wolf. I'll do what I want. And that's the
yeah,
only label that matters. But it's so hard for us to get to the
yeah,
awareness. For some people, it's easy. And
yeah.
others, that awareness takes a long time to come. And I guess talking about awareness, which is a great segue to the next part, leadership
Mm,
has always been something you've been, that's part of your jam. So as you started navigating your growth as a young person, did
mm,
leadership come to you naturally, or did you have to embrace mentors and go, hey, this is the path I want to go down? And how
yeah,
did that happen for you?
yeah, absolutely. So, I've, as mentioned, I talked about a really, really strong work ethic.
Yeah,
And I remember when I was 14, if I take it back there, people, kids and everyone, we were all getting part-time jobs to, spend on the movies and things like that. So I've always wanted to work. And so I went to get a job at 14. I went for an interview, and then the interview person said to me, "Oh, you're only 14." I said, "Yeah, well, in 2 weeks' time, I'll turn 15, and you've got 2 weeks to decide if I'd be, if I could work here." And so they're like, okay. And then as soon as I walked out, they called me 10 minutes later. They go, you can start on the blah, blah, blah date. Because I was like, okay. So in terms of leadership, I think for me, it's to say if I see something and I'm like, okay, that actually makes sense to me, or that's part of, I've just always planned what I want to do type thing. And I guess in a way also I could see others getting a job. I thought, oh yes, I'd love to, earn money, et cetera, et cetera. So I think leadership really started from home and how to make decisions and just, but I didn't actually understand that as leadership as such. So each job I've gone for, or each job I've been in, even my part-time roles, I've ended up as like, I was waitressing one time through high school and I went as a waitress. And then 6 months later, I ended up being the head section waitress So head of the waitress section, and then that was me, and that I was 16. And then I became the trainer, 17, and it was at the local Sizzler restaurant in Manukau City. So, and then I just kept doing that. And when I say full-time job, I went for an office job because when I was waitressing, I just thought, nah, I can't do these double shifts, working. I just want to have a 9 to 5 job. And I just saw these business people walking. And I thought, oh my gosh, they look so cool. And they don't have to work the weekends and doing double shifts like me. And I thought, I'm going to get into the office. So then I just thought, I guess that was a self-leadership.
Yep.
And, when I go back to that title thing, and I was big on titles because, and I'm not going to say I wasn't, because being raised in an Indian family, for me anyway, my experience was like, your title, your education status, your
Matters.
status
Yeah.
is given to you by your
Yep.
title, how much money you earn, and your education, right? So you got to get all three. And if you've got 2 or 3, try again. So it's kind of like that. So just in terms of like when I was going for jobs, even from high school to when I got my first office job, and I sort of counted that as my first job, as being in the office, but actually I was learning a lot of life skills through home and through my part-time jobs as a waitress, working for the local Countdown, or it's Food Town back then. And when I started in the contact center, it was a 9 to 5, and my only thing was I was a debt collector. I was 19, a debt collector, and all I wanted to do that year was save money to buy myself a car, and that was it. And then I just wanted, office job, and that was it pretty much. And the car was for me to go out on social, just socially on a Friday, Saturday night, going partying, and really that was my goal. And when I started working for the contact center, 2 years later, and then from there I just got better at the job and all that sort of stuff. And then the managers at the time said, or leaders at the time said, would you be interested in, more responsibility? And I was like, okay, what does that mean? And it was just because I would get through my work a little bit fast. And so I just get extra responsibility. That's how it was, and leadership. So I was like, oh yeah, I'll go through this. And then, and then within 2 years of it being in that contact center, I got offered, or I went for a team leader role. I was 7 days before my 21st. And I thought to myself, okay, Zeena, if you're meant to stay in New Zealand, go for this job. And if you get this job, stick it out for 2 years as a leader. But if you don't get this job, you're going to Australia. And I don't know where that came, but it just came to my head. I was like, this is what I'm going to do. Obviously, I was telling my dad about this, and he was like praying I wouldn't go to Australia, but I didn't. He's still alive at this time, but I didn't go to Australia. I ended up getting the job 7 days before my 21st birthday. So in terms of leadership, I guess it was people saw that in me, but maybe I didn't see that in myself. I just thought, oh, that looks like a cool job. I'll just go for it. It's kind of like that was my mentality in terms of how I approach things. And so when I was in the contact center, 7 days before my 21st birthday, I got a team leader role. I was only 21 at the time, and a lot of people were a lot older than me, probably twice my age, and been in the role a lot longer than me. And here's me, rocking up in a finance company, and from a debt collector to went into the new business, giving out loans and being a team leader of like 10 people in these dynamics. And the enthusiasm and the passion was there, but the wisdom was not. And I made a lot of interesting choices and got direct feedback, and I learned very quickly how to take feedback on. And then the words self-awareness came to mind, and I thought, right, I'm going to work on my self-awareness and make it my life's work, I guess, for myself, because for some reason I just took to that word or that term like a duck to water, and it served me quite well. A couple of mistakes I made were passion, enthusiasm, and energy. I was like so excited to be a team leader. I messaged everybody like, good morning, happy Monday, blah, 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 all in capital letters in an email.
So good. So good.
I did not know I was shouting.
Yeah.
I was like, awesome team, let's get pumped up. It's a Monday morning, let's do this. We've got like 100 applications to get through. Let's try and get through 150 and make that new business for a finance company, blah, blah, blah. And the leader was like, she told me, oh, you're actually shouting. And I said, I am. And then also because I was a team leader, I would walk in, at 9 o'clock, leave at 4:30 or maybe 3:30, because I felt like it, because power went to my head.
Yeah.
I'm only a baby, 21, and I thought, oh, this is what managers must do. I don't know where I got that from, but I expected my team to be there 8:30 to 8:30 a.m. to 5 o'clock, clock in, clock out. But it was okay for me. I got free feedback straight away, and I just started to realize, oh, actually, as a leader, you should be modeling what you expect your team to do. Uh, and to be honest, Prajesh, it was just the best feeling. My ego took over. Because I was 7 days before my 21st, the youngest leader in that whole contact center, being of a different culture, and here's me in a position of influence of people that are that just not the same heritage as me. And then, my family was so proud, like, oh, she's a leader, but I had some rough times in that very first couple of years. Yeah. So, and then over the years, I got mentors, coaches, worked on self-awareness, got feedback. But I must say, my first few managers were really good with feedback. They just told me straight up. And I must say, for me, I'm able to take feedback directly. Quite, and I'm not going to say it doesn't hurt, but at the same time, I just take it like a champion, to be honest. I'm just like, say what you got to say,
Yeah.
let me sit with it and figure it out, and I'll come back if I got any more questions. And so maybe that's my family's influence.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because the whole thing when you have a leadership position, automatically people think you're a leader straight away. Like okay, and you think you're a leader. Oh,
Far
I've got the
from it.
title. I'm the title. This is it. And I still remember when I had my first again another synergy when I
Yeah.
got my first leadership when I was lecturing at a university. I was still pretty young. They're like, hey, you can lecture a class. I'm like, huh, look at me. And then I was just wow. I just did some ridiculous things because I thought I could do my own thing. And yeah,
Oh,
like I got told very very quickly that like no, buddy, you might have the
100%.
title, but your ranking is still over here. You're still a little bird. You got to learn how to fly. And I think that was, and like you said, the greatest feedback for me at that point in time, that was the direct feedback. But the
Mm,
biggest learning for me was not to take it personally. And,
mm, mm.
because sometimes you get feedback and, oh, it's actually me, but no, that's not you. It's your behavior, what you're doing. And
Yeah.
again, back to behaviors, all behaviors communication. It's pretty crazy
Yeah.
how the synergies have come through the whole conversation.
Yeah.
So, which is fun and it's interesting, just yeah, those emails. I'll send you a
Yes,
short email.
100%.
I'll send you a short email after this year.
Yeah, all in capital letters,
Yeah, all the
please. And
capitals. Yeah,
I want,
yeah,
I want red font and bold. That's what I want. But yeah, I mean, the thing is that, and then throughout the journey, like in contact center, and I must say, I started off in the contact center from that real career perspective, because I thought it was just a job. And then from there, the industry has been so good to me, and why I'm here today in terms of the opportunities around, getting my contact center qualifications, moving around in the different parts of contact center, from the debt collecting side to the new business side to the mainstream customer service side, being a trainer, being a team leader, moving into a customer service role, customer service manager role. And it was really just the robust training and learning development that in a contact center you get. And I'm not saying all contact centers are great, because there's some doozies out there, but some, on a whole, we actually, industry is really amazing. And I always have a lot of respect and fondness of contact center. And I always say I'm from the contact center industry, even to today, even though I'm not in the contact center industry. And
yeah.
I really does get my back up sometimes when people go, oh, you just answer the phones and all this other stuff. But I was like, do you realize the multitasking, all the stuff that a contact center person does on and off the phone, the emotional toll it can take on people, and just what they have to do day in day out, listen to other people all the time. And there's a real science and skill behind it. So I will always advocate for the contact center because of the opportunities it's also given me and the companies I've worked for. So I always be a forever advocate for that industry, because it's got me to where I am. And leadership wise, I've just pretty much gone from strength to strength, to be honest. Like, and that's not saying it in a cocky way, it's just fact.
Yeah.
And that probably sounds a bit cocky as well, but it's not at all. It's just more keep your eye on the prize, and if you can do better, just go for it and see. But you doesn't matter what stage you're at, from a baby team leader to like a customer service manager. Again, the title is a title, but you're always starting at the bottom, you
Wherever
know,
you are. That's right.
and you
Yeah.
keep going up. Yeah, and you learn experience. So yeah, I mean, I still say I'm learning a lot. I always always lifelong learning, that whole thing.
Yeah. And I guess has this led you? So this is, I mean, you're obviously the passion that comes through is so clear, and hopefully our listeners can see that as well. And I guess you've got into professional development, was this a space that you realized, hey, wait a minute, I can add value in? Or when did that idea of, hey, I'm actually, I've got some things I want to share with the world? Because, um, I do coaching as well, but there's a point when you go, that whole imposter syndrome thing, when, oh, do I have stuff? What am I
Yeah,
actually going to be teaching people? And, you navigate that and blah, 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 blah. And what
yeah.
is it like for you as you navigated that? Now you do some pretty cool things. We'll come to them in a second. But
Mm, mm,
when did you
mm.
realize that was your, I'm going to use the word calling for now?
Yes,
Yeah,
100%.
yeah.
I love that question because my last role 5 years ago was in the as a customer service manager. And, the next path really from a natural progression was to actually go into maybe general management, executive director, blah, blah, blah. But that's something that I thought, no, it's not what I want to do, because I thought what actually brings me joy. And really it is about learning development is what brings me joy, and being a part of the contact center. It gives you opportunity to see a whole lot of different things, like from marketing to distribution to the contact center to finance. So it gives you so many areas. And in that, I did a lot of induction and training. And I must say that every time I was able to guide someone along their learning journey, that is actually what brought me joy. And looking at things of how we could unpack stuff, even from a process continuous improvement point of view, like what are the systems, what are the processes that may be blocking a person in terms of doing their job right, or job, to the best of their ability, but also that they can enjoy it. It really comes down to learning development and training development. I love to actually show people how to do things, and just help them along their learning journey. So I think that's where the coaching and passion for coaching and mentorship comes, is because others have also done that for me. So when I've come to this point where I am a Gallup Global Strengths certified accredited coach, and getting a accreditation in the coaching world is something that I'm starting, and sort of it's part of my aspiration and the direction I'm heading. But it's very much around all the stuff I've learned to date, all the people that have helped me to date. And I've not done this alone, and that's definitely for sure. So it's like my dedication or homage to everyone that's helped me in my journey, from my family to all my colleagues that I've worked with, to even my team members that may have given me grief as a leader. They've all solidified this. And yeah, and I just thought, well, what can I think when you get to a certain age, it's all about impact. You say, okay, what impact? And so I think with all the skills I've got, all the sectors I've worked in, it's like, okay, what are the real gems and what spins my wheels? And really now it's about impact. Like, what can I leave as a legacy for the world? And that's literally what it is. Yeah.
I love that because again, lots of synergies here. Because when I go into
Mm,
coaching, it was the same thing. It was, okay,
mm,
people are like, why do you even coach? What a waste of time. I was like, no, 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 it's not a waste of time. It's about growth. It's about
yeah.
it's not about your, or you grow with every client you have
Oh,
growth. You just grow so much. But seeing someone go from nothing to just
mm,
one conversation where they have a revelation is just it's so beautiful, whether that revelation is mind changing or whether it's just changing one part of their life is so beautiful. Which is why, I like the reason why I really, when at the start I spoke about, it's really
mm,
awesome to have you here, because your all your posts that you post are really positive, but they're not just positive, they're the impactful posts. You show the impact that your presence is having, or the people around you that have an impact in your life. Because, we're not in life, we're not in this journey by ourselves. There's so many people around us that
yeah.
either we see with us all the time, or they're pushing us from behind. And, I think this is why I need to acknowledge the fact that you do put that out there, which is really beautiful to see. Because some people out there just put themselves out there. They go, hey, this is me, this
Mm,
is me, this is me. But actually, wait a minute, there's a whole team of people, your
mm.
whānau, your people that made your life really difficult, that are also part of this journey. So yeah, I just want to acknowledge that on the podcast for you. But also talk about impact. One of the things that I guess was impactful for you was writing your poetry book. What is the
Yeah.
inspiration behind that? Is that, you take impact in crowds, but then when you sit down and write about stuff, that's a whole different
Mm,
level of impact that you have to go through your own journey as you're writing.
100%. And so, thank you. LinkedIn is definitely, it's created its own, if I just go back on that one, it's
That's
what's really
perfect.
interesting. I was posting on that, and in the last couple of years a bit more ramped up, because I just love to share stuff. And well, I think I'm funny in terms of a bit comical as well. So, I sometimes can take the piss out of things, but in a very jovial way. because it's just the way I see humor. And it's kind of created its own thing because like when I've gone to networking things, it's like I don't realize, and then I know this sounds a bit funny, but what I do laugh is when I go to networking things, people are like, "Oh my gosh, I recognize you from LinkedIn," and that is the funniest thing ever because
Yeah.
I'm like, what? I'm just like, and so I take the piss out of myself now. I go, oh, you might recognize me from LinkedIn and social media channels such as, and it's just, I'm literally taking the piss like that.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. But it makes for a good conversation starter. But when people start recognizing you from stuff like that, and I like it's to me, I didn't realize what I've actually created and what people actually resonate with, which is really awesome because I was just sharing what I do and I think it's awesome and I appreciate the acknowledgement because I do hope when I do post it's about positive things, but also it doesn't um I am at the center of certain things, but at the same time I'm just proud that I was a part of that process rather
Totally.
than the main character. And I do have an extrovert personality and I can be main character if I want to, but that's like, with wisdom and being a little bit older, you kind of just temper it a little bit, read the room. Yeah, so in terms of Dear Diary, just going back on that one, so when I wrote, I've always wanted to be an author, but I just didn't know what to write about and talk about writer's block for years. And so when I wrote Dear Diary, Finding the Light in the Dark, a journey through poetry, I started writing in 2014, but I had no vision of it being a book. It was literally, I woke up one day in 2014 and the world just felt grey. And it was really weird for me because the person you see now, I flipped some switch flipped and I don't know what happened. And I woke up one morning, I thought I just lost this sense of joy. Like I was just like feeling meh. And then if that's a word, but and I just thought I've got so many things to be grateful for, like health, a roof over my head, all these things that society tells you you're grateful for, that you should be grateful for. I was like, I've got everything I need, right? But why am I feeling a sense of joy? Where's the disconnect coming from? And I remember asking myself that question in 2014. It's like, I must be more than my job, right? And that's all I could think of because I've got as mentioned, such a high, work ethic, drive, uh, but I was just all about my job. My identity was my job. And I projected that as well. And I just was losing joy and until it really hit me. So basically that morning and only a few days after I thought, the first thing people say you should do is go and talk to someone, but that's the last thing you do. And because there's embarrassment, I got good at masking. Like I would be one person at work, one person to my family, and one person to myself. And half the time I couldn't figure it out because you had to put up appearances, right? Well, that's how I felt anyway. And so I started writing, and I wrote, first started writing on my journal, like Dear Diary, and I was like, today I feel it. And then as I was writing that, I just thought, gosh, this is boring. And then all of a sudden I started rhyming words, and then as I started rhyming words, there was verses that was coming out in a very creative, artistic way of how I felt, but I couldn't put my finger on what it actually meant. But all I knew is every time I wrote a verse is that I felt a sense of joy again, or I laughed at it, or there was some sort of feeling I was getting back. Yeah, and then I just kept doing that. I ended up writing 4 collections
Wow.
around my journey, and each collection had 30 poems, 30 verses. And it was really interesting because it would just stop naturally at 30. It would stop naturally at 30. So I never pushed it. But through that experience, I've always said that art is a language that creatives will understand. And I just went with it. And that journey was between 2014 and 2017, so 3 whole years. Again, no intention of being a book because I want to be an author about a business book and tell you 8 ways to how you're going to prosper. That was my whole thing.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell and at the time I didn't even own a business, but I thought this is what I'm going to do. But then I wrote a poetry book, and then anyway, I wrote poetry at the time, and then fast forward to 2020, lockdown, and then I went to this Van Gogh Alive Nights in August 2020, and that whole year was about lockdown, right? From March
Yeah.
to August. And I thought, I do not want my 2020 to be about lockdown. What can I say my 2020 was about a year from now? It's not going to be about lockdown. That was what I decided. Then I went to Van Gogh Alive Nights. It was outside, digital experience, was beautiful on Wellington Wharf. And I could just see people in the rain, the cold, the wind, coming outside in these massive containers to look at the art, different ages. And I thought, how did this guy know that his art would evoke so much emotion, so much passion? People actually come out in torrential rain to see this. And I just thought, I asked myself, what is my excuse? My art is sitting there for 3 years, but I just didn't have the courage to publish it. So I decided from August to December, I'm going to publish my book. And I just went on Facebook and I said on a author's page that I was been following because I've been idolizing this author thing. And I just said, hey, looking to publish a book. Anybody can help me. And one of my good friends, Kirsty Salisbury, she messaged me and said, I can help you. And then it just was history from there. I got my book 23rd of December 2023. So it was the best 23rd of December 2020. It was the best Christmas gift ever. And then everyone said to me, do a book launch. And I couldn't. I was just so emotional because every time I picked up the book, I read a poem to myself, I would just burst out crying. It was just so hard because I'd go back to that feeling or
Yep.
back to the moment. Yeah. And so I didn't actually pluck up the courage to do my book launch till June 2021. It took me 6 months. And even that was a fail in the sense of I did the book launch and my friend was interviewing me at my book launch in Wellington and I just bawled my eyes out through the whole interview. And after the first question, I was like, you know what, team? There's like 60 people in the room. I was like, I don't even care. This whole thing, I'm going to probably cry through this whole thing. You guys just buckle up. Like, this is what's happening. But that's kind of where I've ended up with Dear Diary. And it was the best therapeutic thing I could have done. I also realized after 20 years, I'm actually a creative person, a creative by nature. But when my first team leader role, someone at work had said to me when I was describing who I was or introducing myself, I did say I'm a creative. And they said to me, but no malice intended, but they just said to me that, hey, I wouldn't tell people you're creative because they may not take you seriously. And so as a leader, I thought, no, they have to take me seriously as a leader. So I just
Locked
denied
it
it.
away. Yep.
Mm.
Yeah.
And 20 years later, they came and punched me in the face in a Dear Diary. Yeah. And now I honor creativity because it's about innovation. It's about new ideas. It's what all companies are looking for. And I felt like I was ahead of my time in a lot of ways because I was like, yeah, you should be a creative, come up with new ideas. Let's do something differently, da 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 da. But because someone had influential said that to me at work who I really respected, I thought, oh, that must be the right thing to do. And being a Pacific woman or multicultural woman in her 20s, got the leadership role. I felt like constantly walking on eggshells, so I just conformed because I thought if I learned the way in the world that I was to be a leader, because there was no way I was going to go home and say, Dad, I've lost my job, or I'm not going to
Yep.
be a, because there's just no way, because that was my status building in my family. Yeah. Yeah. So I just endured a lot of awesome things, but a lot of challenging things as well. So anyway, that's where Dear Diary comes from because 20 years later, it just all went boom. Like
Yeah.
I suppressed this whole creativity. And what's meant for you will always arrive on time. And that's what I believe in. Yeah.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that because obviously it was an emotive journey. It was a journey. It was a journey for yourself. And
Yeah.
and I don't blame you for crying because it's just the book, they were written for you. It was your story that you're writing, and it just happened to be out there for other people. It's a bit like, when you're speaking about, Vincent van Gogh, he's painting for himself. That's all he was doing. And when his first painting only sold for 400 francs or whatever, and
Yeah.
he died a poor person. He died a poor person. It's only
Mm.
now, all these years later, that it's now making money and he's not even around.
Yeah.
The same thing for you. You wrote those just for yourself, and
Yeah.
maybe in a few years' time, I'm like, whoa, here's my million dollars, but
Yeah, 100%. I
you
want to make money before I die.
exactly, exactly. Hey guys, you heard it here
I don't want to
first,
go
right?
down Vincent's. I don't want to go down
Exactly.
Vincent's route. I kind of actually want to make money from it. No.
That's right. Totally. But it's really cool because it's a homage to your story, but also the fact that creativity. I think we both grown up in an era where creativity was seen as a negative.
Oh my gosh,
Like
yeah.
you can't be creative, you can't think differently, and
Yeah.
but now the world is a little bit different. But even in the world that is different, still creatives are seen as as us and them, whereas actually
Yeah.
we all have some sort of creativity in us. We just have to embrace it. When I speak to young people, like, oh, I like art. I was like, why do you say that so quietly? Just enjoy that. Just embrace it. Oh yeah, but it's not going to get me a job. I was like, it doesn't have to get you a job. Just you're
Mm,
good at art, so enjoy that. But again, we have to break all those traditional molds about X, Y,
yeah.
Z, ABC equals 1 to 3, which is
Yeah.
pretty crazy.
And I do think like now I'm writing a second book, but it's not a poetry book. It is actually you know, I guess I wouldn't say any book's a professional book, but any book, it's from the heart. But I think the biggest thing is that as I'm writing this book, I'm trying to look at what the structure and the plan is going to be, because you can need a sort of a loose guide of where you want to go and what the message is in the end. Um, you know, have the end part and work backwards. I'm sitting here going, just like Dear Diary was just, I'm just going to I was just writing. I didn't realize I was
Yep.
telling a story even, but now it's like sometimes you get writer's block. You're like, oh gosh, what am I going to say? What am I going to say? And then you're like, in the last few weeks, I just said to myself, just tell your story. Just tell your story. And it's very much going to be around navigating culture, just my experience of, basically the podcast but in written form.
Yep.
And what that was like for me. And yeah, and I just think it's just something I've always wanted to share. And, maybe my um primary bullies will read it. I won't name them, but in terms of like just everybody that has been there for me, whatever experience I've had with them, it's just like this, it all, there's a lesson in everything type thing. So I'm working on a second book, but it's not going to be poetry, but it could be. I'm just really good at rhyming the words. Like it just seems just, and it gives me rhythm, and that's it. And I just run with it. So we'll see. I say it's not poetry next minute. It is 8 ways of running blah blah blah.
Yeah, exactly. But
And
it,
yeah,
but in rap, here we go.
there is a collection called Drop Me a Beat, and
Oh,
so
there
the
we
two
go.
collections is mosaic pieces, which is where I felt quite broken, and all these pieces of me, but I just felt like shattered glass. The second one is Grand Picture in View, when I started, did my first 30 poems, and things started to sort of make sense. And then I did Drop Me a Beat, because I was just taking the piss out of. I felt like a sense of joy. I thought, oh, I'm getting my comical way back, and people probably think I'm dry as, but I don't care. Um, and I started. It was my homage to R&B and R&B and rap music, because I love that. And then the last collection was actually random, which was basically I just got to a point where I was like, cool, felt broken, things started to make sense. I started to have fun with this joy, and now random. What does that mean moving forward? Yeah, what are you gonna do? How are you gonna navigate? And yeah, it's funny when you bring up rap music, because literally that is a collection.
We got it. But you know what's cool about that? It's a season, right? We all have seasons in our lives, and life
100%.
is all about seasons. And some things
Yeah.
happen in some season. And nature has seasons, so why don't humans have seasons as well?
Yes. Yeah.
it's part of us, part of our genes and our genetics and our makeup, which is really cool. And again, what I love about that is, we all have a story. Every one of us has a story, and I think some of us, and me included as well, you don't want to tell your
Mm,
story because of X, Y, Z. But
mm,
as you get a bit older, you realize actually that is part of me.
mm.
Whether it's a good story or a bad story, it is part of my story. And
Yeah.
which is why sometimes I have this really, I always have these little conversations in my head about history. When we talk about the statues and stuff, it's like, yeah, the statues, they can represent things, but it is part of history. It happened,
Yes.
and we can take them down, but we cannot erase history. History is history, and
Yes.
um
That's
and
right.
our story is our story as well. You can't block it out because it's going to come back at some point. You can block it
Yeah.
out, block it out, block it out. You're not a creative, but boom, boom, you're a creative. It's
Yeah.
such a crazy, crazy thing. Um,
100%. And now I'm just thinking about my next book is just, I'm at peace with just telling my story. And if people listen, they listen. If they don't, they don't.
yeah,
Dear Diary was the same attitude towards the end. I was like, well, this is me, and who cares, and see what happens. And the feedback I get from different people, like it's just blows me away, just
yeah,
yeah, it's just blows me away. But yes, evolution, you're talking about ever evolving evolution. Like I love that you touched on that as well. Yeah, because yeah, the season things, eh? The
yeah.
season.
Seasons, totally. Seasons, evolution. Whether we believe it or not, it's happening. It's happening
Mm,
right in front of us.
mm.
Whether you're a believer or not, we're all evolving. whether we like it or not. It is part of our lives. Talking about evolution, Zena, we've been
Yes,
chatting for almost an hour, which is it's
100%.
flown
How time
flown by
flies.
so fast, which is really cool. But you've got so much. I mean, we could keep talking for another 2 hours, I'm pretty sure, but I'm not going to do that to you. Um, but what I would love is our podcast is called Baskets of Knowledge.
Hmm.
And every week we invite our guests to share a piece of knowledge to put into our kete. Um,
Mm.
and you've shared so much in this podcast, but is there any particular piece of knowledge that you would like to share with myself, Tanya, and our guests that come from any part of your life which you may have mentioned or not mentioned on the podcast today?
Yeah, I think just the quote that for me that really shaped my life was what I mentioned about the gift that I got from my dad around learn the rules and play the game better. Like that really did shape my life. And for me, my next season, the evolution is so poignant that you raise that, because I feel like I am going through a seasonal change and I don't know what that means. And I guess a sliding doors moment, or there's a door there, and when I know, I'll just walk through it. But I think for me, the biggest lesson is always the ever evolving, being student of life. And some may say it's cliche, but it's actually fact in reality.
Yeah.
And for me, my next stage is about reset and refocusing. I'm unearthing I call it unearthing self, because I'm trying to understand myself as in a deeper sense, even more so. And that's hard, people, just the stuff you're either conditioned to or whatever. But I guess my encouragement really is about, to constantly challenge your vision and purpose and the impact you want to make in every stage of your life, and let it naturally come to you. And I think when you're feeling restless in life, like, pay attention to it. Because being restless is, some people say it's a good thing, some people say it's a bad thing, but actually it's not. It's actually a really good barometer to ask yourself and stop and just take a pause. So I'm really enjoying the season I'm in, where I'm really unearthing who I am, what I want to do, who was future Zeena. And I talk about myself in this stage here, that my 20-year-old self, which was only 5 years ago, um, would be so proud of the Zeena now, because that's the woman that she was aspiring to as a young team leader, shouting at, thought she was, motivating people via email, but she was shouting at them with positive words. So I always look back at the 20-year-old me and thinking, yeah, 20 years ago, that Zeena would be so proud of who you are now. But actually looking at thinking, okay, well, who is the future Zeena? Like, who was that? What is it? Who does it, what does it look like? How does she move? How does she speak? What does she do? All that sort of stuff. So I'm quite excited about the evolution, and yeah, just the impact is a big thing for me. So again, it's just really about encouraging people to face themselves, not to a self-doubt, but always be self-aware, and take on feedback, all that sort of stuff. But yeah, really about always challenge your vision, purpose, and impact. And that's my biggest key takeaway, because you always got to learn the rules and play the game better, because the game is always changing.
That is beautiful. Play the rules so you can play the game better. And an analogy I also have is learn the rules so you can break them and play the game better. Someone else told me that, and I was like, what a great thing about rules. Sometimes just avoid. I don't like the rules, but hey, they are the rules. Learn them, break them,
Yeah,
and make them better, which
rules
is
are actually
beautiful.
guidelines, to be honest. They're
Exactly,
guidelines.
100%, exactly. Yeah, that's right. So beautiful, so beautiful. Tina, thank you so much. I mean, that is such a power packed learning right there. Learn the rules so you can play the game better. It's a beautiful way, but it's also such a great analogy to your whole story that you shared today with us. Everywhere there've been rules in your life,
Mm-hmm.
but you haven't. You had the rules to live a certain life because you were in a certain culture at that point in time. You learned them, and now you play the game way way better, which is really beautiful. So
Awesome.
you're actually living that learning, which is fantastic, which is really cool. Zina, I'd love to keep chatting, but I'm not going to
100%.
hold you. Thank you so much for jumping onto our podcast. For our guests, feel free to get Zena's book. Jump online, you can find it. But also, if you don't follow on LinkedIn, I would encourage you to follow Zena on LinkedIn, because she shares some really cool and funny things, but also just some really, also not just funny things as well, but also just have the impact that you have in the community, which is really beautiful. Yeah, thank you, Zena, for jumping on, and this has been a really beautiful story that you've shared with us
Wonderful.
today.
Thank
Thank you
you
so much.
again so much. And yeah, we'll keep in touch, but thank you again for the opportunity, and
No worries. Yeah, thank you.
awesome stuff. Thank
Yeah,
you.
stay on the podcast. For our listeners out there, thank you for jumping on. Hopefully, you enjoyed the session here. If you have not learned anything today, go back and listen again because there's so much wisdom being shared here today. Till next time, don't forget to keep smiling, be happy, find reason to be happy. But the most important thing is don't forget to put something into your basket of knowledge. Till next time, ka kite. Bye, everybody.
Thank you for listening to Baskets of Knowledge.
Yeah, we hope that you found something useful to put into your basket of knowledge. And as we said before, remember to put something little into your baskets of knowledge every week. And as always, feel free to like, comment, and share this podcast. Thanks, everybody. Bye.